And now this, businesswoman and mining magnate Bridgette Motsepe-Radebe's troubles in Botswana doesn't seem are over yet. She's been accused of money laundering, terrorism, attempting to influence that country's recent elections, which returned President Masisi to power. But this week it seems some vindication from two South African banks. Nedbank and ABSA say she's not a signatory on accounts allegedly set up for illicit money flows. Now, you may recall she spoke to the media last month about the allegations, strongly denying any of those claims. She's even been slapped with travel restrictions, has to apply for a visa before entering Botswana. Bridgette Motsepe-Radebe, who's also a member of the SA BRICS Business Council, has just returned from Brazil, where BRICS held its 11th summit this week, and she joins me in studio now. Thank you so much once more for getting through the cycle race. It's always such a difficult thing. I really do appreciate you coming in to chat to us. Before we get to the incredible intrigue around Botswana and what's going on there, can we talk about the important stuff, which is BRICS? You were there as part of the BRICS Council for South Africa. What happened in Brazil earlier this week? Is there any good news for us?
Very good news, because I was there since the BRICS was created, and this was my second visit after 9 years of BRICS creation. And I'm part of the delegation of 5 business leaders that were nominated by Business Unity South Africa, Business Leadership South Africa, Black Business Council to represent South Africa in the BRICS Business Council. Every country would have 5 business leaders, and with our business contingency members, we have working groups, agriculture working groups, finance working groups, aviation working groups, energy working groups, manufacturing working groups. So those working groups had business leaders from business chambers in the maybe agriculture sector. Agribusiness was there, and all the other working groups representative of those industries. Their leaders were there.
So lots of important
and with
talk.
the presidents, President Putin was there, President of China was there, President of India was there, the President of Brazil, and the President Ramaphosa. So we went with our ministers and our president, and we represented our country. And the deal flow gets into the working groups. Now, what we need to do is to make sure that BRICS gets entry into Africa, and the integrated economic economic development in Africa must be subjected to the 1.3 billion consumers we have in Africa. Even though South Africa is a small country with mineral resources, we have an entry into the wealth of Africa in terms of the entry into BRICS.
I would imagine South Africa is not an easy sell at the moment. We've got so many problems. You know, the SAA strike is on currently. Eskom is really in a difficult space. How do you sell South Africa? How do you convince people that we're still open for business?
You know, if you look at us, our financial services, we always win the top grading in terms of how the World Bank, the IMF, looks at us. Maybe not as a country grading, but we've got unique infrastructure in Africa. We're the best in terms of the infrastructure development and the business acumen. We have got a stock exchange, and we also have business leaders that have many of them in the Wall Street Journal category. If you look at the Fortune 500, I'm going there tonight to represent South Africa as one of the 240 business leaders in the world, Fortune most powerful women. And you know, in Forbes, you find that we rate. If you look at Fortune Time 100 leaders, South Africa always features there. Now, in terms of our minerals, I'm also the president of the South African Mining Development Association. The first black producer 30 years ago to enter the mining industry was me. I mean, we built mines all over. In Cedroon in Switzerland, the longest railway tunnel in the world, the 2 ventilation shafts were built by a company I owned. Joinville in France, the underground nuclear waste disposal shaft for the government, French government, to dispose nuclear waste, not in water complexes, but underground, was built by a company I owned. So I'm just saying that's where we are. Now, if you look at Africa and we want to sell South Africa, when you look at the mineral resources, at least 90% of the world's productions comes from the minerals. China is very unique, and India in terms of manufacture. What we need to do is enhance our manufacturing capacity in terms of extracting the minerals and making sure that the end product is here.
So we've got to enhance our manufacturing capacity, and I'm hearing such important work that you're talking about here. I would imagine it's been incredibly difficult for you in the face of so much challenge economically and stuff that you feel that you really need to move forward with, to have to deal with what is going on in Botswana. You're on record saying the allegations are absolute nonsense. What I find quite interesting is that I understand 2 South African banks this week have made it absolutely clear that your name is not on any suspicious bank accounts. Is that some sort of vindication for you?
Let me just read what Nedbank is saying. I'm not going to read the whole letter. I'm reading the closing letter first. After conducting a search on our Nedbank systems, we've been unable to find any accounts in the name of Blue Flies and Fireflies, nor any accounts with account numbers mentioned in paragraph 3 above. It therefore follows that you cannot be and are not a signatory on such non-existent accounts. That speaks for itself. Yes. You know, if you ask the organizations in South Africa, how did the Reserve Bank allow 150 billion rands to get into South Africa? How did ABSA, how did Nedbank allow that to happen? It's not true. That never happened. They even forged the bank's documents. It's forged. If you ask ABSA, they'll tell you. So there's a big problem, and my fear is done under oath. And I'm asking people, are we going to go back to what we suffered in the apartheid regime, where underground operatives castrated and character assassinated individuals to the highest order? And we need to have Interpol investigating, and a serious investigation has to ask,
are you still having to get a visa to go into Botswana?
Well, I haven't applied, but I am on a visa restriction because they claim I was trying to do regime change. But they don't only end there. The bizarreness of it, I am also accused of having employed soldiers in South African army and dressed them in civilian clothes to go and do
it must be
civil
so
unrest.
Bitter for you, because
I mean, it's crazy.
You have got such close ties with Botswana. You yourself have described it as a second home.
It's a second home.
Your families are so close to the Khama family. It must be a very, very difficult thing for you to actually have to live through. What is your view on President Masisi, who's been returned as president after the elections? Is he the right leader for Botswana?
You know, I studied in Botswana, and my father was Siseretse Khama and the late Tate Motlana. The three of them were at Fort Hare University before they had children, before they had wives. When I went to Botswana, my father's younger brother was living there in exile, and I studied there. And it's like a second home. I'm very close to the Khama family. But what worries me, Masisi was with me at university. I'm very disappointed at the lack of ethics and the moral acumen. This affidavit that has been signed in court that has put an innocent woman called Butterfly, whom I've never met, who was supposed to be my co-signatory, in jail. They say the Department of Intelligence, the Department of Police, if you look at clause 4 of the affidavit, it states very clearly that they are supporting it under oath, and they say the facts that they grieve to the court case are true. Now, President Masisi, are you going to go back to what the regime, the apartheid racist regime, did to the majority of the people?
Why would you want to do that?
Or are you going to make sure that Botswana fly the Botswana flags of ethics, moral integrity, and dignity? You know, when President Obama did his last speech in the General Assembly, I was there in the United Nations General Assembly, he singled Botswana as one of the countries that was unique.
What would be the possible motivation for targeting someone like you? Is it just because you're part of a highly influential family? After all, your sister's married to President Ramaphosa, your brother Patrice, one of the wealthiest businessmen, you yourself are an incredibly successful business person. Does it just come with the territory, or is there something deeply sinister? And if so, what is that?
When I entered the mining industry, there were laws that says white women and black women cannot go underground. I had to defy legislation. My sister didn't have any relationship with Cyril Ramaphosa. My brother was not there. It was a regime under the apartheid regime that said you cannot be. So I am here in my own right. And why I think this is happening is that we are having a serious problem. We need to have our national intelligence looking into it. Sean Abrams, that was working here, he's there. Can he advise them on how things are done here? And also, we have a problem with the way not only Botswana is singling me out. They had an article in the newspaper that says our army was going to coup Botswana, and the general had to go public and say that's not going to. So is there a problem that the country is having with us? And it's not a problem against against me. They're also targeting innocent people. There's another South African called Komotso who's also accused of having served out money in the millions to Botswana. I haven't met him, but it's stated in the affidavit. So there are many people that the country and the leadership are targeting, and I'm very disappointed that under President Masisi's rule and reign that this negativity is coming out, the killing of animals and all those things that were not, poaching and is happening, and animals are dying, and people were marching against the president in America when he was there. I am not interested in any regime change. I have never applied any time in my life for any business in Botswana. I never apply for business where family members are involved. I don't do it because when I entered the business 30 years ago, there were no family members. There were only laws that says you and I cannot go underground, and I had to defy legislation. And if you look at my balance, at my track record, it shines all over. So I'm just saying this is going to stop. We need Interpol. We need our state financial intelligence center to investigate. We need all intelligence department. We need a thorough investigation, even in the Reserve Bank of Botswana. Are they saying that our Reserve Bank in South Africa is corrupt? Are they saying our banks are corrupt to accept 150 billion rands from stolen money to go? And because before I got it, it was then taken by the Reserve Bank approving. So it's not only me they're targeting.
Absolutely.
They're targeting our Reserve Bank. They're targeting our soldiers and saying our soldiers are going to coup. They claim I paid 100 soldiers in Botswana.
I can see how unhappy
but
you are.
Then I laugh sometimes.
But I have to stop you.
It's like watching James Bond movie.
Yeah, well, it does read like one, and I'm sure that the story is not over. But thank you very much for coming in. That was Bridgette Motsepe-Radebe. Big story that is certainly not over yet. And